Hey guys, have your notes here for section 4-5, days 1 and 2. And what we're going to do here is you've got basically 2 pages of notes. We're going to get through 1 page in this video and the next page in the next video. And so today you'll be doing a lot of the learning, kind of a lot of the interpretation, and then tomorrow you'll be actually putting it onto a graph. You'll learn how to actually graph them tomorrow. Rephrase that. You'll learn how to graph sine and cosine with transformations. Okay, so before we get started on these notes, I'm going to pull up what you did in class today, if you're watching this video when you were supposed to. So this is what you worked on in class today, and you had this big table of values, and then you graphed your sine curve and your cosine curve, and this is what it should have looked like when you plotted your points. So you had, I don't know how many is that, like 16 or 17 ordered pairs that you had to graph here. And I want you to memorize this graph, but you only have to memorize 5 of the 16 points to be able to quickly draw this graph. So the points that I want you to memorize are where it starts, where it peaks, where it comes back down and hits the x-axis, where it has its minimum, or I sometimes say where it valleys, and then where it comes back and hits the x-axis again. So what would happen is if we kept our angles going, so you can see that our angles, we've got pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, those are all in the first quadrant, pi over 2. And then think about them going around that circle. These are all in the second quadrant. These are all in the third quadrant. Are you going around the circle with me? And then these are all in the fourth quadrant. And then we end up back where we started. If we kept this graph going, we would have like, oh gosh, can I do this in my head? 12 pi, like 13 pi over 6. And, bigger angles like that. It would keep going. And what would happen is the shape of this graph would just repeat itself. This would now be the beginning of the next sine cycle. And it would go here, and it would peak, and it would hit, and it would valley, and it would come back and hit the x-axis again. So this shape just keeps repeating over and over and over again. So I just need you to memorize those 5 points. So I need you to check out the x-coordinates of those 5 points. The x-coordinates are 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Those are the x-coordinates that I want you to memorize in order to make your graph. So we got 0, I want you to memorize that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. Now I want you to go back to the graph, and I want you to check out the y values at each of those 5 points. So here you can see the y value is 0. And at the next point that I want you to memorize, the y value is 1. And at the next point, it's 0, the y value. And at the next one down here, the y value is -1. And it ends with y being 0. Y'all can memorize that. And I know you can because this is just like 90, 180, 270, 360. Those are your angles. So easy to memorize. 90, 180, 270, 360. And then memorize the y values that go with them. For sine, the graph starts at 0, peaks at 1, comes back down, hits the x-axis, valleys at -1, and then comes back up and hits the x-axis at 0. Let's take that information back to our notes. We're going to graph the sine curve first. The domain is all real numbers. So our graph goes on forever, left and right. The range is only -1 to +1. -1's as low as it's going to go without any transformations or shifts down or any weird stuff. -1 is as low as it's going to go. +1 is as high as it'll ever get. So remember those 5 x values that I told you to keep in your brain? Let's write them down. They were 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. In fact, let's go ahead and set up our x-axis to mimic that. We've got 0, and then 1, so there's, I put a tick mark here. We need 5 tick marks altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Starts at 0. Where does it go to? 2 pi. Where's the halfway mark? 1 pi. What's half of that? Pi over 2. And it goes 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Now, do you remember the y values that went along with those? Well, the graph starts at 0, so the y values were 0. It peaked at +1, came back down and hit the x-axis. It valleyed at -1 and came back down and came back up and hit the x-axis. Okay, graph them. Here, 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 and here. Did you see how fast I did that? I want you to be that fast. Boom, 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 boom. That fast. 5 points, including this one, from 0 to 2 pi, halfway, half of that, 0, 1, 0, -1, 1. Or, sorry, 0. Okay, now connect them. Smoothly. And remember what I said, it keeps going forever left and right. So this one, the wave would keep going that way, and on this one, the wave would keep going this way. That's what your sine graph looks like. Memorize it. 5 points. Starts here. Boom, 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 boom. You need to be quick at knowing that shape. All right, let's look at cosine. So I'm going back to the paper that you did already for your cosine graph. 5 points. They are here, 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 and here. Check out the x values at each of the 5 points that I just highlighted. This one has an x value of 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Good news. You've already got those memorized. So those 5 points are going to work for sine and cosine to help you draw the graph. Now, on the graph, check out the y values. When it begins, it has a y value of 1. And then it comes down and it hits the x-axis, so y is 0. And then down here, it valleys at -1. So it bottoms out here, comes back up and hits the x-axis, so y is 0, and then peaks again at y equals 1. If this were to keep going, it would repeat its pattern. So really, this curve comes up like this, and it would turn around and go back down again, and it would repeat itself. And the same thing over here, it would turn around and come back down again and repeat itself. Cool news, the y values for cosine that I want you to memorize are the same numerical values. They just start and end in a different place than sine does. So cosine, we're going to start up here at 1, and then it's going to be 0, and then it's going to be -1, and then 0 again, and then 1 again. All right, let's put those in your notes. So we're moving to cosine. You can see that the graph is going to go on forever left, forever right, so our domain is all real numbers. And then it's going to valley at -1, it's going to peak at +1. Those 5x values, good news, they're the same ones as the sine, same order, start at 0 and go all the way around the circle to 2 pi. 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. In fact, go ahead and set up your graph. 5 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0 to 2 pi. Halfway is 1 pi. Cut that in half. Some of you know this one already. Some of you have to count it out each time. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2. Go back to your table, fill in your y values. Now remember, cosine starts at positive 1. So when x is 0, cosine, the y value is positive 1. And then it came down and hit the x-axis, and it bottomed out at negative 1, came back up and hit the x-axis, and went back up to positive 1. All right, graph it. Positive 1, negative 1. Starts up here. Okay? Watch how fast I make these 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm going to connect them. Five points. Start high, hit the middle, go low. Boom, 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 boom. 5 points. You need to be quick, because this is going to get harder. You're going to get a little more confused. If you can get that pattern, cosine starts high. Boom, 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 boom. You need to get that pattern down. Okay, now I need to talk to you about some vocabulary, because you're going to learn some new meaning to words that you've heard for years. So, what we're doing when I graph each of these is, hang on, let me try this again. Put this in black. Okay, so what you're seeing, before it starts to repeat on itself, you're seeing one cycle of the cosine graph. One cycle means I see from here to here before it starts to repeat itself. One cycle. Same with sine. Right now, sine starts here. If it starts there, it's going to end pretty much at the same y value where it started. This is one cycle of a sine graph. So when you see that in the set of instructions on a homework or a test or a quiz or whatever, it'll say graph 1 cycle, or maybe it'll say graph 2 cycles. So 1 cycle would be start, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stop. 2 cycles would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you would do it again. A cycle is one portion of the graph before it starts to repeat itself. So, okay, so I've gone over that vocabulary word. Now, back up. That one uses the word period. So period is, how long did that take? So, ready? Start. Boom, 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 boom. How long did that take? This long. From 0 to 2 pi. That's the period of the graph. It took 2 pi to complete a cycle, to do boom, 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 boom. That's what a period is in this class. Cosine, period. Ready? Here's what we did. We started high. We went boom, 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 and we were finished. How long did that take? 0 to 2 pi. That's the period of a cosine graph. The period. How long did it take to go here, 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 here? So the period was 2 pi. So I've written that in those 2 little boxes. For cosine, the period is 2 pi. For sine, the period is 1 pi. Okay. Frequency. Here's the thing. In a little bit, we're going to look at graphs, and we're going to take a sine cycle and we're going to squish it. We're going to like horizontally compress it. Or we might horizontally stretch it. So what I might end up doing with you is I might squish the sine graph. Don't do this in your notes. Don't draw this. But let me switch colors. I might squish it so that I get 2 cycles in here. So it would go 1, 2. See that? If I did that, I would say this is one cycle. Boom, 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 boom. This would be one cycle. Look at the orange, not the black. This would be one cycle. How long did it take that to happen? 0 to pi. So the period for the orange graph would be pi. Now, question, frequency. How many times did you see the boom, 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 boom from 0 to 2 pi? Orange graph. How many cycles do you see from here to here? I see 2. That would be the frequency of the orange graph. What's the frequency of the black graph? Let me get rid of the orange. What's the frequency? How many sine cycles do you see from here to here? 1. Without any transformations, you're going to see one cycle over a 2 pi period, which means it happened one time, so my frequency is 1. Okay, so I've demonstrated, shown you what frequency means, and then amplitude. Okay, think vertically for just a minute. Think vertically for just a minute. Where's the middle? Vertically, where is the middle of this graph? Well, it peaks at +1, it valleys at -1. I think the middle would be the x-axis. Think that'd be the middle? Vertically speaking, that would be the middle. That's called the midline. Now, my question for you, how far above the midline does my graph go? 1 unit. How far below the midline does my graph go? 1 unit. I asked you how far below it went. Don't give me a negative value. That'd be weird. It's like a double negative. How low did it go? How far below the x-axis? It went 1 unit below. So it went one unit each direction. That's amplitude. How far above and below did it go? 1. That's amplitude. Okay, so we got these vocabulary words kind of down. If you forget, you can always go back to it, but I'll be there. I'll use them over and over again and remind you what they are. So what we're going to do, I hope you kind of got the 5 points for sine in your brain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got them? I'd like you to pause the video and just like poke at your paper several times. Sine, bam, 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 bam. Cosine, I'd like you to pause the video and poke at your paper. Here, 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 here. We're moving on. All right, summary of graphing. What are the 5 points that you're going to use? Like x values. So we are going to start at x equals 0. And we're going to end at 2 pi. Starting point is 0, ending point is 2 pi. Halfway, 1 pi. The middle here is pi over 2. And then 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, and then we have 3 pi over 2, and then it ends at 4 pi over 2. Alrighty. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take what a normal sine curve or a normal cosine curve is, and we're going to do some transformations. But I tell you, yes, it's going to get weird. It's going to get kind of hard. But for sine, I'm still going to have you go boom, 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 boom. For cosine, I'm still going to have you start high. Boom, 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 boom. We're still gonna keep that shape of making points. So I have my pink and blue highlighters. This is what I used with you back in first semester to show you how to recognize transformations, horizontal versus vertical. So horizontal, just like always, I highlighted them in pink. So you know how I said I was going to be really picky about how you write sine and cosine? So after you see the, after you see the abbreviation for sine, what is supposed to follow? After you see SIN, what is this? That's the angle. It's the angle with some weird stuff. It's got some weird stuff happening. You might think of this is usually your theta. But if we're graphing, it's easier to kind of think of it as X and Y. So this is your angle with some weird stuff happening to it. And then what do you see always after this abbreviation here? You always see your angle. So X is our angle, again, X, theta, whatever, with some weird stuff happening to it. So if I were you and you wanted to use highlighters, like a highlighter for the inside, a highlighter for the outside, make sure after you see sine, highlight everything that's in the parentheses. Highlight everything that's in the parentheses. That's all the stuff that's going to be included on the horizontal transformation. Anything out in front, that's going to be part of a vertical transformation. And back here at the end, that's another like up-down shift. Okay, so the first step in recognizing transformations is seeing which is horizontal and which is vertical. Now, let me tell you what they represent. The number that you see out front, we call it A for amplitude. And we never answer an amplitude question with a negative. So when I ask you, what's the amplitude? You're telling me how far up and down it goes. So don't ever tell me that amplitude is negative. You might see a negative number out there, but the negative just says it's going to flip. I want just a positive value for the amplitude. All right, frequency. Do you remember what I told you frequency is? Frequency is how many cycles do you see from here to here? I see one in this black graph. Remember the orange graph that I had drawn? In the orange graph, there were two. That's frequency. And what's cool is your frequency is going to like jump out at you from your equation. Just like this kind of jumps out at you. Hey, I'm amplitude. This says, hey, I'm the frequency. We'll get to that. Phase shift. This is, does it shift left or shift right? This is just like normal. This is just what you're used to. If there's a positive number here, if it's a plus something, hang on, I got to think about this. If this is a plus something, it's going to shift left. If this is a minus something, it's going to shift right. And then D is the up or down movement. Okay, now, so this is cool. It kind of jumps out at you. This kind of jumps out at you. This kind of jumps out at you, except you have to think about it a little bit. And this kind of jumps out at you. This doesn't, and unfortunately, this is what's so important when we go to make all of our graphs. I have to know the period of the graph in order to draw the graph. But doggone it, it doesn't jump out at me in the equation. We have work to do to figure out what it is. No problem. A normal period of a sine or cosine graph is 2 pi. B is the number that jumps out at you. So we're going to take a normal cycle, a normal period for sine or cosine, and we're going to divide it by how many times it occurs. That's going to be the period of the graph. This is a little formula that you're going to have to memorize. In fact, let me write that up here for you. Memorize this. Okay, almost done. We're just going to We're going to practice recognition of transformations, and we're going to write them down. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to graph them today or in this video. All right, so got my highlighter. I'm going to say that I see SIN. This is all horizontal, which leaves vertical, vertical. All right, amplitude, the positive version of the number out in front. Okay, that was easy. Hang on. Let's do vertical shift because I still have a blue pen. Vertical shift is up 2. That was easy. Okay. Frequency. Frequency. This frequency is the number that you see in front of the X. I know, there's parentheses here. If I distributed it in, it would still be in front of the X. The number that you see in front of the X. So, what number do I see in front of the X? Well, I don't. Therefore, the number is a 1. Frequency is 1. Skip the period for just a minute. Let's do the other easy part. Phase shift is going to be opposite from what you would think. Right, pi over 4. Okay, period. Remember how I said to memorize that little formula? It's 2 pi over b. So let's do 2 pi over, what did we say b was? It's right above there. It says b is 1. That's the frequency. So the period is 2 pi. This is going to be hugely important. Can I say that? Hugely? This is going to be hugely important when we go to make our graph. Moving on. Next one. Check out cosine, and then you have parentheses. So this is the horizontal transformation. Vertical is the stuff that's going on outside. Okay. Amplitude. Give me the positive version of the number out in front. But wait, what does the negative do? Well, the negative just tells you that there's a vertical flip. Over what? A vertical flip. How do I know it's vertical? Because it's on the outside. I colored it blue. A vertical flip flips over the x-axis. Okay, so this takes care of the negative. That takes care of the 2, or the amplitude. Alrighty, frequency is the number that you see in front of x. This cosine graph has been squished. Remember what a normal cosine graph looks like? Remember how long it takes to fit in one cycle? It goes from 0 to 2 pi. It happens one time from 0 to 2 pi. The problem that we were just on, what's its frequency? 3. So from 0 to 2 pi, the problem that we're on is going to go 1, 2, 3. It's going to do this 3 times. So they're going to be really squished together. I hope you can kind of like imagine that. Phase shift, there was none. Oh, vertical shift. My bad. I forgot the vertical shift. Vertical shift is going to be down 1. Okay, this is going to be super important when we go to graph it. We have some work to do. So, it's 2 pi over b. Ew. But it is what it is. The period is 2 pi over 3. All right, last one. Pink highlighter. I see the parentheses. All of this is horizontal transformations, but Oh my gosh, do you remember this? What are we gonna, you see how there's a 2 and a plus pi in there? What am I gonna have to do before answering questions about horizontal transformations? This is exactly the time in class where I hear crickets, because so many of you have forgotten the fact that you have to factor. You have to pull the 2 off of the x before we can talk horizontal transformations. So, everything is still going to be in parentheses behind sign. In fact, I'll still go ahead and make everything in my parentheses pink. But now I need to pull the 2 off of the x. So I pull the 2 off of the x and I create my own little set of parentheses, right? So I divided the 2 off of the x. Now, I need you to divide the 2 out of the pi. That's what it looks like. I divided the 2 off of the x and put it out in front. I divided the 2 out of the pi and put it out into the front. And see how I created my own little set of parentheses within the original set of parentheses. Alrighty, so amplitude, the number out front, that's a 1. Vertical shift, none. Frequency, yeah, we can do frequency. Frequency, what is the number in front of x? Phase shift, tell me this one, not this one. Remember, you're not answering questions based off of this. You factored it so that you can answer the questions. So phase shift is going to be left, pi over 2. Now let's figure period. Period is 2 pi over b. What was b? We wrote it right there, which is just pi. Alrighty. Your homework, it's a worksheet, and it's actually day 1 and day 2. But day 1, just fill out the front. It's what we did in these last 3 examples here. Just fill out the front, and then, because we're already at a lengthy video here. And then on the next video, I'll show you how to take all the information that we just did, and then let's draw some graphs. So only fill out the first page, then move on to the next video, which is going to be 4-5 day 2. All right, wait, one more time. Do this with me. Beat out a sine graph. Ready? You're going to start at 0. You're going to go 0, up 1, 0, down 1, 0. Cosine. Start high. 1, 0, negative 1, 0, positive 1. You've got that general shape. That's going to help you when you go to graph them, I promise. All right, guys, good luck.